I'm a little late to the party, but actually that's usual because I like to be fashionably late.
Okay, I'll say that what you said there.
I like somebody else to warm it up, which is why I just saw Justice League.
Ooh, how'd you like it?
Here's what I want to say. It is not the worst Zack, what's his face? Snyder's movie I've ever seen. It is not as good as Wonder Woman, but it's better than Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman. Okay, so it's there.
All right.
Here's what I also want to say.
Yes.
I think maybe we need a new Batman.
I've been hearing a lot about that. Yeah.
And I will tell you why. Because, Joss Whedon did some of the writing. He also did some of the directing. Okay. And sometimes you can tell there's a difference in the lighting or whatever. But clearly you can so tell when it's a Joss Whedon written joke or scene. And dear, pretty Ben Affleck, I'm sorry, he didn't hit one single line of his comic lines right.
Really?
I think he can drama out the yin-yang. But Jeremy Irons, Momoa, everybody was out interpreting their lines over Ben Affleck. And you just sat there and you kind of went, I really wish there were a different Batman saying these lines. I'm not happy. So that's my deal on that. It was fun. I enjoyed it. Matinee, I would say. I wouldn't go. I wouldn't pay full price.
Well, I'll tell you what excites me is that Joss Whedon is doing Batgirl.
It should, because I think he'll do a good job.
And I love Batgirl. I mean, I love her whole story.
I know. We all know you do.
I love the fact that she,
if you ever listen to any other episode of our podcast, you know.
Well, it's true. But I like her story. I like the fact that she's the commissioner's daughter who wasn't allowed in the police force, so she teamed up with Batman. I mean, there's a whole thing that's just I love that whole thing, and he'll do a great job with her. I think trust the creator of Buffy to do a fantastic job.
If you can't have a woman do the thing, you might as well have Joss Whedon, who respects women. At least, please God, I hope nothing comes out about it.
Oh, that would be sad.
That would be very sad.
When the chaos of popular culture makes your brain hurt, you really need relief in the form of a transfusion of analysis and humor. It's time for a POPeration. Join hosts Eric and Stacey as they dissect popular culture one bloody organ at a time. It's just what the doctor ordered.
This is POPeration. I am Eric.
I am Stacey.
And it's the 20th anniversary.
It's unsinkable.
Except that it kind of famously sank.
Yeah.
Titanic.
That's unfortunate naming. Yes. And have you seen it? It's been all over every social media.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 20th anniversary. It's back in theaters.
I saw that. I don't think I can do it. It's 100 hours long.
3 and a quarter.
But it doesn't even have an intermission.
No, it doesn't.
Gone with the Wind at least had an intermission.
It should have. It's enough of an epic kind of movie. They should have, as soon as they hit the iceberg, which is almost, because I watched it at home, it's almost halfway through the movie. Almost at the exact.
I have a few little fun facts.
That would have been a great moment. Boom, we hit the iceberg. Everyone knows what's coming. It's Titanic. All of a sudden, intermission. Go to the bathroom. Have
That's your intermission music.
Or they would just play the Celine Dion thing again, because it was everywhere in the score. Oh my God, they're always playing that song.
But you know what's fun about that? James Cameron did not want to have any music with words in this movie.
Okay, well, usually there wasn't. It was just this instrumental version of...
Right, but so what he did, but he put it at the end. And, of course, obviously, it's iconic. And I don't even think... I think Celine can't stand to sing it anymore.
She's probably had to sing it a million times.
Yeah, and she's, over it.
Yeah.
But...
it still works. I tell you what. I mean, after 3 hours and 14 minutes of Titanic, it worked. It worked. The song worked. The movie worked a whole lot more than I expected it to.
So here's the thing. The Titanic itself, this is a movie based on the sinking of the Titanic, which was labeled as unsinkable at the time in 1912. It was built in 1910, 1911, 1912. It was considered unsinkable.
Yep.
They had it was built in Ireland, and they had all this. They had the newest engineering technology, and that was the whole idea. So you can ride on this boat, and you could feel completely safe. It was also like rigged out.
Yeah, super
to the nines. So the Titanic had two sister ships.
Okay.
The Britannic and the Olympic. Here are the facts. The Titanic was a British passenger liner, and on April 15th, 1912, early morning hours, it hit an iceberg and sank in the North Atlantic Ocean. It was its maiden voyage from Southampton to New York City. On the Titanic, there were 2,224 passengers and crew. Over 1,500 of them died, making it one of the deadliest commercial peacetime maritime disasters in modern history. It was the largest ship at the time, and for a long time they couldn't find it. It went down. I mean, they found the passengers, or the ones, they found them, but they couldn't, when they were doing diving, and they couldn't find it until 1985.
Wow.
And this is really kind of where the movie story starts, in that James Cameron became obsessed with the whole idea of finding the Titanic and what they were discovering about it. And it was his muse that inspired him to write the movie.
Okay.
So this movie was originally 4 hours long.
I can believe it.
And it went down to, what is it, 3? It's like 3 hours and change.
3 hours and 14 minutes.
Yeah. He pitched it as Romeo and Juliet on the Titanic, which, if you think about it...
Kind of, although the whole point about Romeo and Juliet is that they were both kind of dueling families. Jack was just poor.
Correct. It was just a class war.
Yeah.
But Leo had just finished doing his version of Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo plus Juliet with Claire Danes?
Correct.
Don't get me started. Hated it.
Yeah, we're not going... This is not that podcast.
Okay. Hated it. Just throwing that out there.
So Cameron spent 5 years researching, and it was the first Best Picture Academy Award winner to be produced, directed, written, and edited by the same person, James Cameron.
Got to give it up for Cameron. I mean, he did,
here's what I do. I give him respect as an artist. From what I've seen and heard, I think he has the ego. And I think
he's a jackass, yeah.
But he's an ass. Yeah, I think he's been pretty much that. So I don't want to have a drink with him.
No, he doesn't pass the beer test.
No.
I wouldn't want to hang out with James Cameron, but he makes a good movie.
So
until he started making all those Blue Kitten movies, like what the fuck is up with that?
There's another one.
Okay.
Or whatever. No, I'm out.
Hated it.
Okay, again, not that podcast.
Just gotta.
So here's the thing. Here's my question to you. So the Titanic, 1912. That was a long time ago. Yeah. And yet, it's still this story that, it's still, everybody, my children know about the Titanic. Now, some of it is because of this movie. I think I told you my teenage daughter, a couple of years ago, we had it on DVD, and she watched it like once a week for like 3 months.
Oh, my God.
I know. What? At some point, you stop seeing anything new. But again, it's that kind of a movie, and certainly, as I said, she was a teenager. But here's my deal: why? Why do you think why is this movie? Again, why are we celebrating it? Why are they putting it back out in theaters?
Well,
there are a lot of
movies
that came out that year that.
But none of them broke box office records the way that Titanic did. I mean, it ran forever. Like, it came out at Christmas time, right? But then it was in theaters in May. People were still going to see this movie.
That's true. No, that's true.
And when you consider it broke box office records and it's that long, like, you couldn't show it 5 times a day. A movie you can put in there 5 times a day can make a lot more money in a weekend than Titanic could. It broke box office records, and it's long as shit.
Yeah, it is.
So it's just, it's historic in that sense. And they're putting it out in the theaters because it will make money. But a lot of it is the hype of how big it was and just remembering how... And I know a lot of people who saw it multiple times in the theater during its first run.
I saw it once in the theater. I have seen it since, obviously.
Yeah.
Here's the quick. I'll do the quick plot summary, and then we can get into what we like, dislike, and all that stuff. So, a 100-year-old woman named Rose DeWitt Buttaker tells the story to her granddaughter, Lizzie Calvert, about her life set in April of 1912 on a ship called Titanic, when the young Rose boards the departing ship with the upper-class passengers and her mother and her fiancé, Cal Hockley. Meanwhile, a drifter and artist named Jack Dawson and his best friend, Fabrizio, win third-class tickets to a ship in a game. The old woman explains to her granddaughter that the whole story from departure until the death of the Titanic on its first and last voyage, April 15th, 1912, at 2:20 in the morning. So that's the plot.
Okay.
And that's the plot that has, and I guess it's probably going to be iconic forever just because it's iconic now.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be Gone with the Wind 100 years from now.
So the deal is, this is some of the questions that the movie is kind of playing with.
Mm-hmm.
Was it an act of God or a human mistake or both kind of thing? There were a lot of people died, obviously, from all classes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I'd heard the word steerage until this movie came out.
Oh, no, I knew about steerage just because I was raised in the military and we talked about being packed away in steerage a lot. Navy dad. So, a lot of nautical terms being floated around my house.
And that became, everybody talked about, you're in steerage, which meant something at some time. And, but it has everything. It has love. It has sex. It has violence. It has
jewelry.
It has scandal, greed, crap ton of conflict.
Yeah, and the whole class distinction thing. I mean, the not only the love story between this poor young man and this, what we learn is actually a poor woman who's clinging on to the very last vestiges of her upper class lifestyle by trying, her mom's trying to get her to land this rich husband so that they'll be taken care of. Class is all over this movie, but then when you get to who gets to board those boats and get saved, and will they even go back and try to save any of these folks who are floating on the surface, it all becomes about how much money you have and how people are valued based on their bank accounts. It really gets to, it's simply told. It's not a very complex film. Also,
there have been many, many movies made about the Titanic.
Yes.
And good ones, and ones that were made within 25 years of it actually sinking.
Uh-huh.
So it's been a story that has just taken hold, and I think because it did cross the classes. So everybody felt like I knew somebody or I could have known somebody on that ship. And I think that's a big reason why it's popular, or at least it resonated and resonates.
Well, and that whole forbidden love angle is just always going to get, a certain crowd who wants to see the rich girl fall in love with the poor man, and love is more important to her than her pocketbook.
And they were pretty. A lot of pretty people.
Yes, a lot of pretty people in this movie.
A lot of pretty people. And it was also cutting edge special effects at the time.
At the time, yeah. I mean, and when the hull of the ship is all of a sudden goes vertical, and people are falling off that thing and bouncing off of the chimneys on their way back down into the water. That was it was amazing to watch. I mean, it was this incredible,
felt very real. And I'll say that when that first look at it, when we see Rose and she's looking at it, and you're like, holy crap. And it's almost like, to me, it was a little bit like Jurassic Park when I sat there and went, how did they get those dinosaurs so tame? You're like, wait a minute, back up. I was sitting there going, oh my gosh, how did they build this? Well, they didn't build it. But that was how good it looked.
Yeah, no, it looked great. It didn't even occur to me that they, and I'm sure there are boats that are just as big now. But they did not build a life-size replica of the Titanic. You're right. But it didn't even occur to me to ask the question, oh my gosh, where did they get another Titanic? I was just watching the movie. And that's good CGI and special effects, because when you're making CGI and special effects for some futuristic sci-fi thing, that there aren't spaceships that shoot laser beams. So you're kind of like, oh, how did they make that? when you're watching a period piece like this, you know, when the special effects have to be really seamless. They can't stick out the way that they might in Star Wars. You know, how do they make a lightsaber? Well, that's a good question because we don't have those. We've never seen them except for this movie.
But clearly this everything here has been invented in theory.
But they didn't actually take a boat that size and put it vertical in the ocean and have extras fall off of it and hit chimneys on their way back down to the water. So they had to figure out how to do that. I'm kind of struck by, you keep on asking this question, like, why this story and why does it kind of get us so much? I think that a couple things I want to say about that. One is that as much as we, you know, like the Oscars and the, you know, the kind of prestige films are always these really dark dramas. We had a whole show, one of our very first shows was about how comedies don't get enough respect and how we should, you know, we should laud them a little bit more.
Was a comedy?
No, but what I'm saying is there is a popular need for tragedy. People do like these tragic stories. There's something about them that does kind of grip the imagination. And when you think about, like, tragedy, I read something somewhere, it was really interesting, that said, you know, spoilers actually don't diminish anybody's enjoyment of what they're watching. If you know what's going to happen, it actually doesn't keep you from enjoying it. So even though everyone's like, no spoilers about a lot of things, okay, everyone who walked into Titanic knew the boat was going to sink. It's called Titanic. As soon as it hit the iceberg, you have this feeling of dread. And then what's interesting about the movie is that everything seems fine for like 20 minutes of the movie. After the ship hits the iceberg, you know, people don't even know. I mean, Victor Garber knows the boat's going down, but everyone else is walking around like, why are they waking us up? And, you know, Frances Farmer, who plays Kate Winslet's mother, says, I'd like some tea when I get back to my room. You know, and you're like, bitch, you ain't get back to your room. Nobody get back to their room. You're getting on a boat if you're lucky.
Well, I think that one thing about this, and this is kind of storytelling stuff, is that the idea that knowing that what's going to happen to it, and yet you have all this backstory, and you're having all these little subplots of why it goes back to Irwin Allen back in the 70s, who did all those disaster movies, where you'd have all these, you know, Earthquake and Poseidon Adventure and Towering Inferno, where you have all these little subplots of everything's fine and dandy, it's just a regular Monday, and then, you know, shit hits the fan a little bit later on. But it's the idea that anticipation of when, you know, and of course we know Titanic's story, so you know that they're going to get through the day okay. Yeah. They're going to get through dinner okay. It's going to be, once it's dark, that's when it's all going to go down.
And in case you don't know the timeline, James Cameron tells you the timeline with computer simulations at the very beginning before the old grandmother starts telling her story.
We forgot to tell about, we're talking about the old woman who's telling the story to granddaughter. So it's, in theory, modern day. This 100-year-old woman is telling the story to her daughter. And here's one of my issues. I guess we needed to have the modern day scenes in there so that you have the wrap-up at the end. But I found it distracting. Whenever we pulled out of the 1912 story into the 1997 story, I was frustrated.
I don't think you needed it, quite honestly. I don't think you needed that part of the story.
But it also would make people not as pissed off at Rose at the end of the movie.
Okay, so talking about spoilers, we'll talk about Rose in the end of the movie in the beginning. Let's talk about the beginning of the movie. You know, you spend 20 minutes with Bill Paxton with a really bad blonde dye job.
Yeah, it was random. It felt very random.
Very weird. Doing, like, he's sending these
1997.
Robots.
We're in the modern period.
Sending these robots down into the wreckage looking for, now we think he's just looking for stuff. Like, what can he find?
It's a scavenger.
He's looking for this necklace. And the necklace is kind of a thread throughout this entire movie. Was the necklace fake? Did James Cameron just make that up?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no such thing as the heart of the ocean. Okay, so there's a necklace called the Heart of the Ocean, which is this big heart-shaped blue diamond that's worth oogobs of money, right?
By the way, it's really tacky, but...
And Bill Paxton is looking for it, and he thinks he found it, but what he actually finds is a drawing of a naked woman wearing the necklace, but he doesn't find the necklace itself. All of a sudden, he gets a phone call from this old woman that's like, I'm the woman in that picture. So they fly her out, and she starts telling not only her granddaughter, but the entire crew. But before we get to the her story, the guy, this big guy from the crew, actually shows this whole diagram of exactly how the boat sank and explains it all, which seems really boring until 2 hours later when you're actually watching the boat sink. It is kind of cool that you understand what's happening.
So,
otherwise, it would be like, why is the boat vertical? Then why does it go horizontal again? Why did it do that? But it's been explained to you. So that actually all makes sense, and it stops you from being so confused.
My theory about that whole long 20 minutes with Bill Paxton and his freaking drones and whatnot is because Cameron had just gotten literally off the boat doing that.
Mm-hmm.
He absolutely loved all of that.
Yep.
And that, as I said, that was what inspired him to write the movie. So he included it. I think Paxton was, in theory, that was who Cameron would have wanted to be.
Yeah, maybe. Does he want to be blonde? I don't know. I
think he may have been at some point.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't care.
Some of the things were cool. The looking at the drones kind of going down the hallways of this thing that's been underwater forever, and all the kind of moss that's growing all over it, and then all of a sudden kind of seeing it transform into its 1912 self. That's kind of cool.
Oh, he's a great filmmaker. And I'll be honest with you, I did watch a lot of the documentaries about the finding of the Titanic because I've always been fascinated by it.
Yeah.
So I have seen A Night to Remember and all of those old movies. I am one of those that's fascinated by the whole story of it because it did touch so many. So I thought that was cool. I think that's good filmmaking to have the drones in there. But I did feel like there was a lot of the modern day stuff that I could have done without.
Yeah, 20 minutes at the beginning was kind of unnecessary. They popped to Gloria Stewart played Old Rose, nominated for an Academy Award for playing Old Rose in Titanic. They popped to her like halfway through the movie for like a minute. I don't know why. Just halfway through, we just kind of check in with Old Rose for a second, and then we get sucked back into 1912 again.
Yeah, I think that's because that's the idea is we're still in her brain. Just FYI.
Okay, I didn't need that.
Yeah.
And then at the very end of the movie, we go back to Old Rose, and this is why the world hates Old Rose.
Yeah.
Is that throughout all the machinations of, who has the necklace and why, and there's a whole thing that in the thread of the storyline, what we know from watching the film is that she ends up, the necklace is in a coat pocket that she is wearing when she goes down with the boat. She gets saved, but basically she doesn't go back to her old life when she gets saved. She takes on Leo DiCaprio's name and creates a whole new identity for herself, but she's got this multi-million-dollar necklace in her pocket. Now, watching it again, I was kind of like, okay, she couldn't do anything with that necklace. It's not like she could go to a pawn shop and say, hey, I've got this 20 million.
No, you take the stones out.
Yeah, but when the big stone that's worth all the money,
she was going to always she couldn't do anything. With. But the rest of them, she could have taken.
She probably could have taken the stones out, and maybe But in any sense, where does this poor woman from steerage, which is what she's claiming to be, what is she doing with this? So she kept it for a long time, but at the end of the movie, she sends it back to Leo DiCaprio in the bottom of the ocean. Because it was his
to begin with? No.
Because they were married in their heart, Stacey, and what's hers is his. Even though it wasn't hers, it was actually Billy Zane's.
Thank you.
So basically she steals the necklace from Billy Zane and then gives it to Jack.
And we're okay with that because he was an ass. But,
yeah.
I mean, we're supposed to be okay with it because he was an ass.
But what the fuck are you doing tossing a $20 million necklace into the water and getting nothing in return? Everyone's mad at her.
Everybody's mad at her.
And they should be. That was a stupid thing to do.
But that was what they started that in the modern time. That was the beginning. And then it threaded throughout the whole of the plot with her fiancé at the time in 1912, Billy Zane.
Her horrible mother.
Her mother, who was just very desperate. Yeah,
I mean,
she's well out of that.
Frances Farmer, her character, Rose's mom, had a point of view.
She did.
But at the same time, you do look at that, and I don't know, they were American, right? So with modern American kind of eyes, you look at this, and she says, do you want me to work as a seamstress again? And I'm like, rather than marry her off to an abusive asshole, maybe.
Your daughter, yeah.
Maybe. I mean, if you know how to be a seamstress, then, and if she says again, it's like, well, you've done it before.
Yes.
And is he the only rich man that, and you're walking around with Picassos. That's the other thing. Did her original Picassos sink with the Titanic? That was my other question. Really? Because those Picassos are kind of famous. So, James, are you telling us that those paintings actually sank? That the Degas, the really famous Degas, that, by the way, is hanging in Paris right now, that actually went down with the Titanic, according to James Cameron? That made no sense. Just a thing. I'm just throwing it out there.
Here's what I'll say about Frances Fisher's, about the mom, Rose's mom. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. I have a little bit of sympathy for her in just reality.
Mm-hmm.
In the movie, no, she was you're selling your daughter.
Yeah.
And he is an awful person.
Yeah.
And you've actually witnessed that he's an awful person.
Yes.
So I had a problem with that as a parent. Because I'm like, maternal instinct you ain't got. So, yeah, I had some issues there. So, but anyway, so Rose, all this, and as I said, the necklace is, a part of the whole thing. Billy gave it to her as a gift, and, so...
Contingent upon them getting married.
Correct.
Clearly.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah.
He's still thinking of her as his property and his fiancée.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the plot goes on, and then again it ends with where did the necklace go? And I do have some more things I want to talk about the necklace. So, anywho, so that's kind of where we are. And I think that we can also, the next thing we want to talk about is we're going to talk about who's in it, because it's a pretty amazing cast.
Yeah, it's a great group of people.
You're listening to POPeration with Eric and Stacey. Take a deep breath. This may sting a little.
Love can touch us one time and last for a lifetime.
It's POPeration, and I'm Stacey.
I'm Eric.
And we're talking about the Titanic. Okay, the cast of Titanic was amazing.
Yes.
Now, having said that, I always thought Leo DiCaprio played Jack. Kate Winslet played Rose. I always felt like Leo he had such a baby face.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me. I think it's better now when I see him. I'm like, okay, he's a little bit more of a grown-up.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really hard for me to look at him and go, you're not old enough to be doing any of that.
Yeah, I tell you, I discovered Leonardo DiCaprio along with most people, I think, in What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Yes, although he was also on that sitcom.
He was, but I didn't know who he was from that. His name didn't, But in What's Eating Gilbert Grape, he played a mentally challenged boy who was Johnny Depp's younger brother. He was amazing in this film. He was so, so, so good. And it wasn't just that, okay, so he didn't play the mental condition. He played a character with this mental condition, which is so hard to do. So I was a huge fan after Gilbert Grape. But then when he became like a matinee idol, I was with you. It was like, he's not Cary Grant. He's not, he's not these tall, dark, and handsome kind of leading men that I think a movie like Titanic kind of begged for.
I agree. Now, do you know some of the actors that were being considered?
I heard a rumor that Matthew McConaughey did a reading.
Yes. That was who the studio wanted.
Okay.
And Cameron said, nah.
I don't know if I'm completely, I don't know if I'm on Team Matthew or not in terms of Jack.
But that was later on because Johnny Depp was offered it and he turned it down.
Okay. Johnny could have been good.
Christian Bale was up, but Cameron didn't want two Brits playing the two lead Americans because he already had Kate Winslet. He didn't want Christian Bale. So Christian Bale was out because of that.
Christian Bale's did so many Americans. I don't even really think of him as like Brit is not a huge part of his identity to me. I mean, I know he is British,
but at the time he had done so many American things at that time.
True.
Yeah, but also now Cameron's first choice, which even though I loved him, River Phoenix.
Okay,
he died. Obviously, couldn't do it. But River Phoenix, who kind of had a more I would say he was like a harder edged Leo. Yeah. And I do think River Phoenix could have done anything you ever wanted to do.
He was amazing.
I'm so sorry that he died.
Yeah.
But so there's that. Paul Rudd read for it. He wanted it. Nobody asked for it. He wanted it.
You know what? I think Paul Rudd could have been. Okay, Paul Rudd's incredibly affable.
Totally.
And so I could see.
And he would look the age that I felt. I felt Leo was, and whether Leo was the right age or not, he looked young for me. And I felt like, if I'm looking at Paul looks.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Rudd in 1997, I don't remember what he looked like. But I mean,
it was around Clueless time.
okay.
Be back clueless.
I could believe that Paul Rudd might have a little bit more mileage underneath him in terms of traveling around Paris and drawing his pictures and kind of doing it. I could see Paul Rudd doing it. Now, I will say, after cutting Leo to ribbons throughout this, Leonardo DiCaprio is a great actor. Watching it recently, they both looked like children to me. So that was actually fine. Like, when I watched it in 1997, I felt like she was more mature than he was, and therefore there was a kind of a dynamic there. But I also, when I watched it this time, she was very young. She was not the height of maturity. Her character was not. Kate Winslet has a presence.
Yes.
That speaks, years beyond her actual age. But I think that she was really rebelling, and so he was a young spirit of that rebellion. It worked for him. Like, Leonardo and Kate really work for me in this movie. Having said all of that, I would have given Paul Rudd a shot, maybe.
Well, as I said, the studio wanted Matthew McConaughey.
Okay.
And Cameron said, no, I'd rather have Leo. At that time, he was down to Leo. And
okay.
He said, I want Leo, and he insisted. So Leo got it, but again, he got it because Johnny Depp turned it down. And River Phoenix died.
Yeah.
But, again, I agree. I think there was a chemistry between the two.
Oh, yeah. No, it worked.
So it did work. I just say that at the time watching it, and even now, and yes, you're right, because I'm comparing it to what she's done lately. She does look so young. But I think that I still feel like he just had this baby face, no wrinkles, no nothing, no, just this little smooth.
Yeah.
He just looks like he's 14, and I'm like, dude, that's too young.
Well, and again, like I said, I'm now in my mid-40s. I was in my mid-20s when this came out. Looking at it now, they both look like children. Like, I'm more like Molly Brown. That's my girl, because, like, we're contemporaries at that point.
No, I get that completely.
And so I see the movie from a completely different perspective.
And maybe that's why I'm sitting here, I'm being able to sit there and relate to Frances Fisher.
In a way that we couldn't before, because then it was like, don't trust anyone over 40, right? That was kind of where we were when that movie came out. We're in a different place now. And so it's interesting watching a movie 20 years later and, the perspective you get, because I'm no longer identifying with either Leo or Kate. I think I really identified with Kate Winslet when I saw it the first time, and I thought, here's this woman, she's trapped. There's this whole thing. It's like, bird in a gilded cage, right? She wants freedom. No one understands her. Jack represents something that she's really, and when you're young and you take everything really, really seriously, that's where she is, and I was so into that. Now I'm watching this movie about these two young, rash children on a boat, who meet a tragic end. And I look at them and I'm like, okay, you do feel those feelings that deeply, and spoiler, Leo dies. But when he freezes to death and falls to the bottom of the ocean, and she believes that the love of her life has gone forever, I put it this way, I believe that she believes that.
Yes, and here's the thing, is that I agree that where you are in your life when you're watching can determine how you feel about certain aspects. And I will say that, yes, I was much younger and there was a lot of life left in front of me. And so you look at these kids where everything is in front of them, and you have that relation, which is probably why my daughter was watching it, is that she was relating to, you have all this life, you don't want to be trapped, you don't want to get married at 19 because you have 60 or 70 years ahead
especially
of you.
Married to an abusive asshole.
Oh, correct. I mean, that's like,
you don't want that ever.
On that, but it's that, I think there was that initial not being married, that stunts her life. She wanted to be creative. She wanted to do things, which we see via photographs that the granddaughter finds of her grandmother in the modern period, that she did live that life. She did all these things, which that's, again, asterisk, because I have a question about that.
Okay.
So then you have Rose, Kate Winslet, which I think was a perfect choice. Kate... it was a little different. She push, nag, James Cameron to cast her.
Really?
Push, nag, sent him flowers. She called him all the frickin' time.
Really?
She said, I am the right person for this role. I want it. Before it was written, She heard about it, heard he was writing it, and she said, I want it, I want it, I want it.
She's good. She knows
But
something.
do you know, I'm just going to read this. I'm going to read some of this list. I'm not going to read it. It's a long list. This is who the studio and James Cameron were looking at.
For Rose. Go.
Jennifer Aniston, Gabrielle Anwar, Christina Applegate, Rosanna Arquette, Drew Barrymore, Rose Byrne, Jennifer Connelly, Holly Marie Combs, Claire Danes, Gina Davis, Amanda Donahoe, Cameron Diaz, Minnie Driver, Eliza Dushku, Claire Furlani, Jodie Foster, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Natasha Henstridge, Angelina Jolie, Mila Jovovich, Nicole Kidman, Robin Lively, Carrie Lowell, Madonna, Penelope Ann Miller, Emily Mortimer, Tandy Newton.
Really?
Gwyneth Paltrow, Christina Ricci, Jolie Richardson, Kerry Russell, Jerry Ryan, Winona Ryder, Nicolette Sheridan. Can you imagine? Ione Skye, Tori Spelling. Again, can you imagine?
Oh, my God.
Sharon Stone, Charlize Theron, Uma Thurman, Rachel Weisz, Reese Witherspoon, and Alicia Witt. They looked at all of those people.
Some of those names, maybe. Most of those names,
no.
What the fuck are you thinking? No,
well,
what? And Kate Winslet had to send this asshole flowers?
Yes.
Jesus.
She's not on that list.
I know.
She's not on the list.
Crazy.
And in fact, there's a few Brits on there, but not as many as they could have been.
Yeah, and the character's not British. Like, I get, I can see where you'd write the script.
Sharon Stone? Wasn't she too old? And Gina Davis?
Think so,
Weren't they both too old?
Well, we think, I don't know, 20 years ago, it's hard to place it. But
Jodie Foster, I can't even imagine.
Yeah,
I can't even imagine. She's brilliant, but I can't even imagine.
I mean, yeah,
I can't even imagine.
That's
Jennifer Aniston, only because of Friends.
I mean, she's cute. Gwyneth could have done it.
Gwyneth could have totally done it.
Uma could have done it, but I don't think either one of them were as good a choice as Kate.
I think they needed to have somebody similar.
How old was Nicole Kidman in 1997? Because temperamentally, if she were of the right age, she could have done it.
I think it was probably a little old for her.
Probably. I mean, especially opposite Leo.
But I think she's the same age as Gina Davis and Madonna.
But if it was like Nicole Kidman opposite Matthew McConaughey, I could see that.
But McConaughey, I think, was old too. I think he was too old for that.
But again, if they were both supposed to be in their late 20s, of course, if they're both supposed to be in the late 20s, then tell mom to fuck off.
Yeah, exactly. Because probably at 25 you got your money. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, they had no money. That was the point. They had no money.
That's right. She was desperate. And you know what? I think the right decision was made.
No, I think so. I don't know that Titanic would have been the film that we remember and the success that it was.
I also think you needed somebody who wasn't known.
She was not unknown. I mean, Sense and Sensibility was her first,
but okay.
To a certain crowd. She wasn't known to the teeny boppers.
That's what I'm saying is that, Sense and Sensibility, it was not a bomb, but it did not make the money anywhere near that Titanic did.
No.
So people...
But she was on the radar. Oscar nominations do that for you.
Oh, I'm not saying she wasn't on the radar, but I look at some of these people and I'm like, are you kidding me? They're too well known. We already have an idea of who they are.
Yeah.
I just think it was a really good choice. Yeah. And I think
I'll just say, my little outburst about Madonna. I think Madonna's a better actress than most people give her credit for.
I agree with that as well.
But I think I might have said this on the show before, her fame precedes her in everything that she does. So if she's not playing Evita or Breathless Mahoney, if she's playing the girl next door or, she would have been so wrong for this.
I think she would have been very wrong for this, especially in 1997. Okay, she broke out in the 80s. So... we're talking. I think she's a little too old for it. Yeah,
probably.
But I just also think the acting chops needed was out of her depth.
Yeah, I
totally do. I just that's where I am on that.
I think Madonna's better than people give her credit for. I'm not saying she's the best actress who ever lived, and this, like I said, while this movie is special effects, oh my god, the sets, oh my god, the costumes are amazing. I mean, they put a lot of money into putting. When I say it's simply told. The characters are what they are. There's not a lot of, what Titanic is not about revealing depths of character and finding out long-told secrets that have, it's
not a character study.
It's a very straightforward kind of story. But I think that in the wrong hands, Rose could have been really fucking annoying. Like, really annoying.
Yeah, I think she would have been
rebellious
awful.
young women are, you have to play them with a certain light touch. And I believed that the joy that was on Kate Winslet's face when she gave that officer the finger on her way down the elevator with Jack was just something about, and that's where I kind of looked at her and said, she's still a kid. And so I get it. I totally get it.
And
I
I'll
think
tell you, just an asterisk, it was moments like that would piss me off. I don't think she would have done that. Not in 1912. I don't know that she would have known what that gesture was.
Maybe. I mean, historically.
That took me out of 1912 and put me right smack dab in 1997. I got back in because water was coming in, but I'm just saying that there were some choices like that where I kind of went, no, that wouldn't have happened. I don't believe you.
So another place where kind of the same thing, when they're spinning around the dance floor down in third class, those moments, I just kind of went that, that might have been more period specific, but she was so happy, and the playing of how miserable she was whenever she talked to Billy Zane, and just how joyously happy she was. Stuff that wasn't really in the script, she brought to that.
Well, and that's the
deal. You need to be a good actor in that sense.
You've got to be a really, really good actor to bring all of that into, so that I can look at your face and know exactly where you are.
Yeah.
But you also have to have, as you said, a lightness of touch, but you got to be likable. The audience has to like Rose, and they have to like Jack at the beginning, or you might as well stop the movie now.
And Rose whines a lot at the beginning. I mean,
yes,
Kate didn't, but Rose does. So if you look at those words,
her first line is like, "Well, it's not as big as the Titanic," or whatever.
Yeah, or it's not that impressive.
She's talking, and so it's like, really, it's the friggin' Titanic.
Yeah,
but you're not impressed. But again, because Kate is Kate. That even though that's her first line is a whine, you're okay with it because you're like, well, let me see. And
also, they have that great shot of the hat brim coming up and her looking at it, and you do see something in the back of her eyes that says, "Wow, this is amazing." And I immediately got, she said that to piss off Billy Zane. She didn't say it because she's unimpressed.
Right.
She's saying it because she's playing well, and she's also letting him know, money does not impress me. Like, that's it's like, I'm not here for your money. Francis was there for his money, but she wasn't. And that was so, but again, it takes a good actor to convey all that, because somebody who just read the line as written would just be like,
yeah, no, it would sound whiny and
it would be terrible.
And again, we have to like those and care about those characters in order for it to be successful. So Old Rose was Gloria Stewart, as you've already mentioned. She is the only person who worked on the film who had been actually alive during 1912 when it sank. Would you like to know who turned down the role of Old Rose?
Sure.
Anne Rutherford.
Okay.
Fay Wray.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That would have been something.
She didn't want to do it.
Okay.
It just didn't. The story didn't appeal to her.
Okay.
So there you go. And it's like, alrighty then.
Okay, Faye.
But wouldn't that have been interesting?
That would have been. I mean,
I feel like that would have been a nice cap for her career. You started with King Kong and you end with Titanic.
That could have been cool. I mean, it was a nice cap for Gloria Stewart's career, quite frankly.
Well, it was what she started with, though. See, she's really an iconic. That's what I'm talking about. Fay Wray.
Gloria Stewart was not nearly as iconic as Fay Wray was. Yeah,
that it would have been nice for Fay to, you start with a classic that made tons of money, and you end with a classic that made tons of money. I don't know. Molly Brown, you will laugh, although I can see it. Okay, we know Kathy Bates
did a great job as Molly Brown.
And you can't imagine anyone else.
Oh, I can imagine a few other people.
Can you imagine Reba McEntire?
Yes. Absolutely I can. Yes.
And the only reason that she backed out, she had scheduling conflicts. She would have done it. She had some scheduling issues.
I mean, as much as I love Kathy, part of me wants to say I would have loved to have seen that.
I think Reba would have done a fun job.
Yeah, and I'm not to say
but I love Kathy.
I love Kathy in this movie, so it's not to, one is not necessarily, I'm not going to compare them, but Reba would have been fantastic, actually, as Molly Brown. She really would have.
So, Bernard Hill played Captain Smith, who was the captain of the Titanic. And, I mean, he's a character actor, and if you've seen Brit stuff, you've seen him, whatever. So this guy, I was stunned to find this out, was offered the role, but he turned it down only due to health reasons. You're sitting down. Yes, Eric?
Yes, I'm sitting down.
Robert De Niro as
What?
Captain Smith.
Oh.
Imagine.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'm glad Bernard did it. Yeah. I mean, De Niro's an icon. He's an amazing
He is an
actor.
icon, but that is and we talk about this when you get pigeonholed or whatever. I have a hard time, and Robert Duvall's kind of like this too. They're both brilliant actors, but they really have to choose roles for me to believe them in. Even though they're good, a British captain, I don't know that I would have believed it. It's Robert De Niro.
I've never heard him do an accent, so that would have been like part of.
I haven't either, and I think there's a reason.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm thinking, would the character have become American, and it would be hard
can't do
because
that. It's history.
James Cameron can fuck with history if he wants to. He probably did a lot of times in this. You know what I mean? It's like,
I know, but that's a big one to fuck with because to me, like, there were trials and crap.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that would have been a bad choice, is what I'm saying. But I mean, I could see a lot of people in that. It's not a huge role. I mean, if you'd said Jim Broadbent, I'd be like, all right.
Oh, no. That would.
Or if you'd said Ian McKellen, I would have said, okay. No. Derek Jacobi, sure.
Yeah, I get all of those, but that's why I was like, this was a weird one.
Yeah,
this was just me out of the world. So I was glad it was fine. So James, I told you that Cameron did not want to have any music with words. He wanted Enya to do all the music.
You can't see my face, but Eric's not happy with that. I mean, Enya makes lovely music, and actually she uses words. They're just Gaelic. Just because Cameron doesn't understand them, there's no words. Fuck you, James Cameron.
What happened? Is that James Horner, who is the composer of the music for the movie, he secretly arranged with lyricist Will Jennings and singer Céline Dion to write "My Heart Will Go On."
Okay.
And then they recorded a demo tape. And Cameron didn't want it in the movie with the words, but he did like it enough, and he said, okay, over the closing credits, which, of course, is what made it iconic. And now, as I said, everywhere. I think Celine can't stand.
Probably. But again, it worked. So before we leave casting, I want to talk about Billy Zane. Like I said, Titanic works. You watch it now. It's a classic. I can see why it's a classic. So many of the things I actually didn't like about it in 97, I appreciate now. I still feel like two things. The necklace going down is bullshit. Mm-hmm. And two, and was there room on Rose's raft? That's another conversation.
We're going to get to that.
But the third one, did Billy Zane need to be such a dick?
No.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of think that it would have been somehow more powerful. Well, it would have been more subtle, and it might have been a writing job that, quite frankly, might be beyond James Cameron, to create a nice guy who has a lot of money that Rose just isn't into. And it might have been more of a struggle to be like, should I be with this young, starving artist when there's a perfectly nice man who's got a lot of money, who would make my mother really happy, but I'm just not in love with? That would have been a much more interesting story for me to watch for 3 hours.
Yes. And I have that exact same issue with it, and I felt it feels very amateurish to me in the writing aspect, because the idea is that, I mean, lives are complex. Decisions that we make in relationships are complex. And do I need it to be black and white in a movie? Not all the time, but also to be more realistic, it shouldn't be black and white. And that was my problem with this, he was clearly all bad.
Yeah,
all bad.
He was a cartoon villain.
He was.
So bad that even the character must have known that he was an asshole. And no one walks around thinking of themselves as an asshole. I mean, people have different motivations, and clearly everyone is at the center of their own story.
Correct. Hopefully.
But I wonder how Billy Zane as an actor found any kind of, truth in what he was doing.
Now, there's an interview as to say, where did you go to rationalize your behavior to yourself? Because that's what we do every day. We rationalize why we're doing it as being the best for, and usually it's yourself. But I mean, the whole idea is, how do you was it insecurity? That would be a fascinating.
And actors have to do that all the time. When I was in college, my senior year, I was cast as Edmund in King Lear. So, real quick about Edmund, he's the bastard son. Mm-hmm. He thinks he kills his older brother. He makes sure that his father is blinded and sent to a cliff where he's obviously going to die. And he's in cahoots with the evil daughters who are trying to take over their father, King Lear. I started those rehearsals, and I was basically twirling my mustache on stage.
Sure.
And the director came to me and said, "If you're terrible. Like, you're really bad." He pulled no punches. And he said, "I'm going to have to replace you if you don't get your act together." And I said, "Well, what are you talking about? I'm just playing what's on that." He said, "If you can't find a human reason why this man is doing what he's doing,
right,
it's over." And I talked to him, and I thought about it, and he said, "Look, if you don't do all these things, you are going to be a bum on the street. Everything is going to be taken away from you, all because your dad fucked a woman that was not his wife, and you are therefore this accident of birth, and it's so unfair."
Yep.
And I really got in touch with, like, what does it look like from this man's perspective to do it?
Exactly.
And I turned it around. It was a big lesson for me as an actor. I look at what Billy Zane did in Titanic, and I'm like, how do you play that? It's so obviously cartoonishly villainous.
We also don't know.
It's not Shakespeare.
No, but we also don't know is how was he directed? Clearly, it ended up the way James Cameron wanted it to look.
Yeah.
So, did Billy go in with a little bit more subtle, complex? Who knows? And James said, "No, don't do that. I don't." My feeling is, and when you look at some of James's other stuff, he does kind of have a black and white universe.
Yeah, his moral compass has two
really,
ends,
really,
and there's
really good,
really no shades of gray.
Really bad.
Yeah.
And so there's the complexity. So I think I tend to lean into your idea that maybe he just couldn't write a more complex character.
And I was watching the whole thing. I was like, the captain who, had some disregard for those in third class, the captain could have slipped the necklace back into Leo's pocket and kind of framed him that way. And the nice young man could have been like, "Oh my God, he stole from me. Like, Rose, like, what are you doing?"
Yep.
And it could have been just, and her looking at him is like, "No, you don't understand. You're not seeing him the way." And I would have totally bought into this rich guy who thinks that, my fiance is now consorting with a thief. And you just got to get her away from him. Right. There would have been like a lot of good people on the screen, all at opposite motivating factors, and it would have been so much more interesting than just this dick.
Yes, and it's more compelling, I think, which is kind of another word for interesting. So I'm just repeating what you said, but that's not what I meant to do. But it would also. Yes, Eric, it is that, but it's also compelling. No. It's interesting and compelling. But my point was it would also be much more realistic.
Yeah.
People can relate to it. It's much more relatable if there is an actual conflict of, I don't know what I should do. Well, clearly you don't want to marry the ass.
Yeah.
Okay? There's no conflict here. You're not having to think about this.
Yeah.
Because clearly Leo, Jack, is this poor guy with a heart of gold.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's like I think that it would have added another depth, another level that wasn't there. So I'm glad you brought up Billy Zane because that's exactly right. And some of his moments pulled me out of 1912.
Not to take anything away from Billy, because I think as far as cartoon villains on stage go, or on screen, it was fine.
Yeah. I don't know what
but
it was.
The writing, I have issue with.
And I will say this, I don't know, and again, I don't know what kind of offers he got afterwards, but it doesn't look like, from the outside looking in, like this movie helped his career. Because he was then, it's like, you want an evil guy? Let's get Billy Zane. Yeah. And I got tired of that because I think he's a good actor and I think he's good looking and he could have gone down that leading man role, but I don't think he had. I don't think he got. The offers. And it's funny as we're discussing, the character that could have been. I'm seeing Paul Rudd only because that's somebody who But I mean, if you'd put Paul Rudd in that role, and then you would have had him be this hapless, maybe not the brightest crayon in the box, but loves Kate Winslet, or to the extent that he knows what love is, he thinks that it's wonderful that they're going to get married, and and almost like, well, of course you're my property because that's the way it works, but not in a malevolent cartoon villain kind of way. Could have been more interesting. Anyway, so we can talk a little bit about the actual filming. of it and what was going on if you want to.
Sure.
Here on POPeration.
Open wide. It's your prescribed dose of POPeration with Eric and Stacey.
Near, far, wherever you are, I believe that the heart does go on.
And we're back. This is POPeration. I am Eric.
I'm Stacey.
And we're talking about Titanic. It's the 20th anniversary,
Happy
Stacey,
birthday.
of Titanic.
The film will go on.
Oh, that was good. I see what you did there.
See what I did there?
I like that one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, as I said, we talked a little bit about the music, and it is. There's so many things that are iconic about it. Aside from the fact that it used like the most famous boat ever, and I get that people want me to call it a ship, but I'll call it a boat if I want to.
Okay.
Here's a few facts, and I think that some of this Cameron did do on purpose. So the scenes that were set in 1912, which is basically the whole movie except the present day Bill Paxton stuff, they have a total length of 2 hours and 40 minutes. That was the exact time it took for Titanic to sink.
Really?
Yes. Also, the collision with the iceberg reportedly lasted 37 seconds, and that's how long the collision scene is in the movie.
Perfect. That's great. I mean,
Which I think is good because it gives you a way to understand how quickly it really did happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where somebody with James Cameron's, obsession with this story, that and when he's in control of the writing and the directing and the editing, that can all come together. I'm sure he was sitting there with a stopwatch going, we've got to shave off 2 seconds because it has to be 37 seconds long. Maybe another editor would have said, yeah, but those 2 seconds make a smoother story, whatever. This kind of trivia ends up being kind of cool. And it worked because he planned it from the beginning to be 37 seconds long. That's kind of cool. I like that.
Also, now you talked about watching it, the modern day stuff where you get that boring backstory of how the ship broke in two and all of that. Now, in 1995 and 96, when it was filmed, and even 1997, the idea was that they did believe that the ship broke into two pieces, and that is what we saw on Titanic. But in 2016, they now know that the ship broke, the actual Titanic broke into three places.
Really?
And it was the famous bow section, the imploded and crumpled stern section, and the middle double hull of the ship. And when it fell to the bottom of the ocean, it was so far away that they didn't think it was there. They thought there were just the two sections because they didn't see that section.
Okay. So the ship was bigger than we remembered it being.
Well, and James, yeah, because when they're down there looking, it's the idea is that some may be underneath, and so you compensate, you rationalize where the stuff is. Cameron acknowledges the error, but he just, defends his description due to the fact that the midsection was simply not known about. And he's right. You can't go back and say,
reshoot the whole movie. So
because if you go back to A Night to Remember and those other ones, it was just they had it where the ship didn't break apart at all. It just went at a slant at a 45-degree angle, whatever that is, and just slowly the whole boat went in one piece.
Because that's probably what they thought happened. We hadn't discovered it on the bottom of the ocean yet, so there weren't that many witnesses who could who weren't scrambling for their lives to kind of sit there and take notes on exactly how the ship looked when
and they didn't have divers. I mean, I'm guessing that it was a good 30 or 40 years before anybody attempted to dive.
Well, when the drones are down there and Bill Paxton's he talks about the amount of water pressure that's down there. Humans can't go down there.
Right.
You have to send robots down there to actually look, and cameras to look around for you, and little robot arms to grab pieces of furniture because divers will die.
Right.
I mean, they can't go down that far.
So there was no way for anybody to know exactly what it is. So you guess. And when you're 25 years away, which is when a lot of those first movies were made, you're totally guessing based on people talking. And
so that computer simulation that we saw at the beginning of the movie was the best guess at the time in 1997.
Correct.
And
so I don't blame him at all.
Who cares? No. I mean, what are you going to do? Reshoot the movie? Forget it. The movie works. And it is interesting, you know, when the whole thing went vertical, like I said,
Yep.
it made sense because you'd lived through the boring lecture at the very beginning of the movie, and now you're getting your payoff because it was much more exciting, obviously, the second time.
So we talked about, you know, so basically the Titanic hits and chaos ensues.
Mm-hmm.
Jack and Rose scramble for their lives, trying to...
A number of times, up and down and up and down and up and down.
They're evading both the officials and Billy Zane and trying to get on a life raft.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going on. Stakes are high. And so then they finally end up jumping in because you got to get off there. You're going to, you know. And Jack finds a door for Rose to get on. And this is a lot of controversy that he sits there and he basically freezes to death. His body shuts down and then he sinks to the bottom of the ocean. And the controversy was there was room on that door.
Yeah. So BuzzFeed actually did a really funny thing where they like cut out a thing that was that big and showed all the different positions that two people could get on there. Now, a bunch of people said there was no way for him to get on without the whole thing capsizing.
Did you see Mythbusters did it too?
I did. And James Cameron was on there and he kind of admitted, yeah, I guess he could have, but he's still, you know, he defended his vision by saying, look, the script said that Jack dies. I'm like, well, obviously, but James, get a smaller door.
Right.
Just get a smaller door. You wrote the script. Yeah, you wrote the script. And you wanted him to die. I get it. All you needed to do to make that artistic vision a reality is to get Rose a smaller door.
Well, what I feel like he actually, in one of the scenes in Mythbusters, he was actually vindicated in that in order for, and it's what you're talking about, in order for Jack to get on the door itself while she's still on it, they would have had to have this rigging of, you know, shirts or ropes or whatever.
Yeah.
So on that one hand, it's true. He couldn't get on there without dumping her.
Yeah.
But as far as the size of it, yeah.
They would have had to both climb on together, I think, from opposite ends so that it would have been flat.
And you're in this...
And it was risky.
Disaster.
And he was being chivalrous.
He was being chivalrous, but it was also a disaster in that you're not thinking about scientifically, let me pull out this math class that I never took because I'm a poor kid, you know, from
and it's
New
1912.
York. And it's 1912. But, you know, so I don't really, I did at the time go, he could get on there, but when you look at the physics of it, he really couldn't easily.
I do think that Cameron could have made a better choice by getting a smaller piece of flotsam that there was no question there was only room for one, and then you would have been okay with it. You know, that it was a small thing. It was just funny that controversy still kind of lives on, and everyone's like, damn it, girl, let him up on the door. There's room.
Well, I think it's hysterical because there was a whole Mythbusters show about it. I mean, what the heck? That's hysterical.
Yes, this is why, Stacey, this film is coming out in theaters again now, 20 years later, and people are going to buy tickets to watch it on the big screen because it's that big of a deal.
It was the first movie to gross $1 billion with a B.
$1 billion. Now, so has any other movie grossed that in today's dollars, but like old movies that were, I mean, if you translate Gone with the Wind's box office take into
I think
today's dollars.
Avatar beat it.
Yeah.
And that was Cameron as well. But that's
not nearly as good of a movie.
No, because I don't think even in today's dollars that Gone with the Wind or any of those other Sound of Music, whatever, I don't think they hit. I don't think they made that much.
And again, and so what I was saying at the beginning, that's amazing to me, especially considering the length of this film, and that you can only really have 3 showings a day in a theater.
But also think, here's another thing that and I don't know whether when they do these calculations that they consider this. So back in the day, a theater had one movie.
Yeah.
When in 1939, you had a theater, you could only play one movie.
Yeah.
And if it's Gone with the Wind, which is 3.5 hours long with an intermission, so you're talking about 4 hours.
Yeah.
You can only play it like 3 times a day.
Yeah.
On a good day, 3 times.
Yeah.
But normally you're going to play it twice.
Yeah.
Whereas now, I have
3 p.m. and an 8 p.m.
I have a 14 movie theater.
Multiplex.
Okay. I can have it in 3 theaters and show it 5 times.
Yep.
Because I don't have a time restraint. That's not really fair. You know, it's hard. That's why I don't know. Comparison-wise, I don't know if they do that because that's a little different. It is.
Access to theaters. You know, and, you know, I mean, do rentals, like, factor into these box office takes when you say how much money did a movie make if everyone like rents it now and streaming or whatever? I don't know. I mean, it would be interesting to see.
I don't know.
Because how many people have seen Gone with the Wind since 1939? Who knows? I mean, but yeah, I mean, these box office, it's almost like an award thing. It's a little arbitrary.
That's true.
But $1 billion is $1 billion fucking dollars. I mean, it's a very successful film.
So this is a fun fact. So the original release date was July 25th of 1997. Now, Harrison Ford had a movie, Air Force One.
I remember it.
Scheduled to be released the same day. When he found out that Titanic was coming out the same as his, he said, nope, we're not doing it then. And I don't know whether he pushed it forward or back, but he said we're not doing it at the same time.
Okay.
Now, having said that, and when Paramount said, okay, we won't do that, Mr. Ford, because they wanted him to do more movies.
Yeah.
In the meantime, there was a movie that was released the same day. It was Kevin Costner's The Postman.
Oh, God. The Postman would have been a huge hit if not for this same-day release as Titanic. That's the only reason that movie's not... They should blame
the Titanic for that piece of crap.
It should be coming out this year as a 20th anniversary release as well, really. Jesus fucking Christ, The Postman.
It was such a...
Oh, it's terrible.
It's ludicrous.
It's terrible.
Okay. So there was a lot of improv in this movie, which I did not realize.
Oh. It doesn't seem improv. Was Will Ferrell there and I missed him?
Don't start with me on that. Don't even do it. So when Rose meets Jack to thank him for saving her life, all improvisation.
To thank him for saving her. So the next day on the boat, not their actual meeting is when he keeps her from jumping.
To thank him. That was all. And then at the end when she says, "This is where we first met," that was hers. She made that up.
She's a character. That.
She also, speaking of Billy Zane and him being such that character, Cal was such an awful person. So she was supposed to jab him with a hairpin, but instead she decided to spit. And so that when you see Billy Zane's face after that, it's real because he was not expecting to get spat upon.
That's great. It was a great choice, too, because, I mean, the whole thing, it harkened right back to Leo teaching her how to spit. Off the side of the boat, and Mom being so, horrified by the fact that her daughter was spitting, the fact that she knew how to hawk a big loogie, and, that actually made great. I'm surprised James Cameron didn't write that in. Good for Kate.
Yep.
That was a good ad.
Now, another ad lib was Cal's big temper tantrum, where he flips the table. Not in the script to flip the table. Okay. Billy Zane was just all up in it. And so when they catch Rose's expression, that is Kate Winslet going, what the hell?
What the fuck is going on?
Yep. And now here's
Method actory bullshit. Who the hell do you think you are, Jared Leto?
Do we really? Did we have to say...
Not a fan.
I'm not either, and which is why I'm sorry that you said it. So here's one, and what is the most iconic line of the movie?
I'm the king of the world?
Yes. Guess who made that up?
Leo?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
All right. I mean, it's not my favorite line that's ever been uttered on screen, but Leo certainly knows how to capture a moment.
It has been voted number 4 of the 100 greatest movie lines by Premiere Magazine, just an FYI.
So James Cameron, he edited it, he directed it. He didn't write the whole thing. Some of the best lines and moments apparently came from his actors, which, good for them.
So, I mean, it's one of those where it was fun looking up some of these fun facts about this movie. I think I agree with you. I think that it is iconic on a lot of different levels, but it hits that basic, and maybe it is that whole good versus evil, black versus white kind of thing. Maybe that's why, is that it is universal because it is that simple. And it is. It's a simple story.
Yeah.
I do at the end, and spoiler, Leo sinks to the bottom. He's dead. As we said, Rose, once they get rescued, she hides from anybody who would know her and absconds with the big coat and the
necklace,
the heart of the ocean. Then when her granddaughter sees all of the photographs about all the stuff, I thought she had sold stones. I don't know because the life she seems to have lived based on the photos costs money. she was
She did some traveling.
She learned how to fly, for Christ's sake. I mean, the fact that at the end of the day she still had the necklace intact and was able to stupidly then throw it off the side to the ocean.
I think it would have been just as satisfying if she had pulled out of her pocket the unhinged blue diamond, just the blue diamond, and let it slip from her hand and fall down. You wouldn't have seen it go down with all the white diamonds kind of the... But you're right. People who would have thought about it and analyzed it would have said, okay, so clearly she took all those white diamonds and cashed them in at some point. But, that's
what I thought when I saw the photographs. And then later on, and I'm like, wait a minute, how was she able to have that life?
Well, because she married an upper middle class man, and she, had a nice house, and she raised some nice children, and now she has this lovely granddaughter, and she does pottery. I mean, it's one of those things that, that clearly she had a different last name. She has grandchildren. She got married and she had kids.
She did, but it looked like she did it after she learned how to fly, after she did all of the other stuff. I mean, there was a lot of stuff on there.
Yeah. To me, the thing the horse was interesting because, when Leo said, none of that side saddle crap, and she was like, what, a leg on each side? And so the very last thing you see of Kate Winslet is she's astride on a horse.
But the whole idea is that she did all these things that they talked about, that they were going to do, that he was her inspiration for living life to its fullest.
Yeah.
Again, I come down to, I thought she'd sold some of the diamonds to do that, and that made sense to me. And
that would have made sense.
That.
Yep.
But the fact that then she pulls it out and drops it down, and that was just stupid. I didn't understand that at all.
She was giving it to Jack because
he's there still.
Yeah.
Because he's there. He's Aquaman. So he's down there waiting for
hanging with
the
mermaids.
Hanging with...
Waiting for the necklace. Yeah, I mean, that's yeah. It was dumb. It was dumb. I mean, it was a really bad take for the last thing to happen in the movie, because I walked out 20 years ago and I ended it going, stupid bitch, what are you doing?
Yep.
And it dumb. If there was another Memento that had been, if she had taken the hairpin, out of Bill Paxton's thing.
I think your idea of just the blue diamond itself, that would be the last thing that obviously she couldn't sell.
Yeah.
So she still had it. What is she going to do? I mean, that would have been fine.
Yeah.
But the fact it was still attached to all of these other diamonds that could have let her live and eat and whatnot.
And I just figured she got off the boat. There was a deleted scene that I read about recently that someone said it was so well done. Why didn't they put this deleted scene in the movie? But I know now, while we're watching it again, there was a scene that was filmed that was deleted where Rose gets rescued, gets put on the boat, and everybody sees her. Molly Brown sees her. Her mother sees her. Billy Zane sees her. Clearly James Cameron went in a different direction with the end of this movie, that she ends up basically, everyone thinks she dies and she takes on a new identity. She takes Jack's last name and she goes off and lives a completely different life and separates herself from everyone she's ever known. But there was apparently this really beautifully done scene where Rose, boards the rescue ship. And there's all of this, and according to the guy who wrote the little review of this deleted scene, said the acting is superb. I mean, Frances Farmer's face when she looks up and sees Rose is apparently a moment of brilliant acting that most of us will never see unless you look up the deleted scenes on the DVD. And they said the guy who reviewed this little scene said, I preferred that. I really wish that would have been left in the movie, but you couldn't have the ending that Cameron wanted.
I was going to say, but he wrote it, so I don't understand why they would have filmed that scene if he didn't have a reason for it.
I think maybe they filmed the whole thing, and then at the end he was like, "Wait a minute, let's have her." He changed his mind. I mean, I don't know, things change, but and the horrible guy who wanted them to speed up the boat, he was on the boat as well, and everyone apparently is just giving him death glares the entire, because they all blame him for the boat going down.
Yeah, here's one thing I want to say about the Titanic. So in 2012, they mapped the entire wreck site for the first time, and a disaster investigator concluded that the Titanic was not poorly built. It was not built of inferior materials. There was no design flaw. In fact, she floated longer than the builders expected her to once she struck the iceberg. And he said that even modern-day battleships would not survive the sideswipe blow that the iceberg gave the Titanic. He said that the stern and end probably corkscrewed to the seafloor underwater. But another investigation said that had the Titanic hit the iceberg head-on, she would have survived. Probably would have been damaged, but she wouldn't have sunk, and she could have reached New York maybe a day or two later.
Wow.
So it's one of those where, to an extent, you do say, well, yeah, when you look at it that way, it's an act of God. And I think maybe that, on the other hand, what were they not, what was missed? Human error as far as looking ahead. But also, what was the whole idea of pushing through? Usually they had other protocols to do. So it's a fascinating, and we're still looking at it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have this new information from last year. So I think it's one of those, this ship will go on.
Oh, Jesus. Really?
Forever.
Okay, Stacey.
Near,
fine, far, wherever you are.
Happy birthday, Titanic.
Yeah. Okay. So, final diagnosis on Titanic. What's your one sentence?
I think it's a
takeaway?
classic, and it deserves to be there. It's not flawless, but I think it is really good at a lot of things for 1997.
Yeah. I guess mine is, when I look back on 1987 and I saw it, I was cynical. I rolled my eyes a little bit. I'm like, I don't know what the big deal is about this movie. And I described it to people as, so it's a drippy love story for an hour and a half, and then it's a disaster movie for an hour and a half. And watching it again now, I see that those two things work together. You wouldn't care so much about the ship going down if you weren't invested in these two lovers and wanting them to make it somehow and survive. And all of her actions, when she actually escapes the lifeboat that she's on so she can go back to Leo, because she has a feeling that Billy's not going to let Leo off the boat because he's a dick. That it worked together for me a little bit. And the love story at the beginning is not divorced from the disaster movie, because we're on the Titanic. And we already saw the computer simulation of it sinking. So there's this sense of the two really do go together much, much better than I thought they did when I saw it the first time.
In the 30s and 40s, there were like 4 or 5 Titanic movies made. In the 70s, there was, I think, maybe a miniseries or at least a TV movie made.
There's been a Broadway musical
How'd
called
that
Titanic.
go down? And what happened to it? It sank.
Actually, the Broadway crowd likes it, and it comes back. I mean, there's
Titanic.
revival.
You know what? I was thinking of a different movie, but you're right. No. I was thinking of Gone with the Wind had a musical. Did you know that?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It was many, many years ago. But anyway,
all right.
Moving on. Yes, and here's why. So there is. I think that there will be in another 20 years, somebody else will make another Titanic movie. I don't think this is a story that will die. I do think this will go on.
You've been listening to POPeration with Eric and Stacey. Check out our website at POPerationRoom.com for links to our blog and other extras. Don't forget to subscribe to POPeration via iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube, and other podcast locations. You can also follow at POPeration Room on Facebook and Twitter. Music provided by PurplePlanet.com.